You start working with Tiger and, it's later in his career. Why you compared to, he had Butch Harmon. He had like all these other guys.
I think Tiger in 2000, that's the best anybody's ever swung a golf club. So it's not reinventing the wheel. It's saying, okay, look, precedent set. You've done it before, but your body's different. You've gone through a ton of injuries, multiple surgeries. How do you get as close to that as possible within the constraints of what your body can currently do? You've become one of the best athletes of all time. You've got, more than enough money you'll ever spend. Have tons of injuries. Like most people would be like, you know what? I'm good. Yeah. I'm good. And he just didn't give up. And then he won the Masters in 2019, which to someone who saw like how much he had to fight during windows, it was unbelievable.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Wealthy Way podcast. Today, I am probably more excited for this guest than anything else because I see all these business guys and these real estate guys, and it's great. I love talking to them. But today, I have Golf Digest number 2 ranked coach in the entire world. He used to coach Tiger Woods, Bryson DeChambeau. He's coaching Jason Day, and now he's coaching Ryan Pineda. And we're about to have a lesson after this. I'm super excited to have Chris Como. What's up, man?
How you doing, man? I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So I got to tell you, so for the audience, the way we linked up was Chris DM'd me. It was like, hey, dude, I love your stuff. And I didn't see the DM for months. And fast forward, he DMs me again, and I look through it because I see the blue check mark, and I'm like, who is this guy? And then I start looking through, I'm like, dude, this guy's a really big golf coach. And then, I start watching all the clips and everything else, and I'm like, dude, I need to get this guy in person and just learn. And here we are.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Look, coaching, something I've been passionate about for a long time. But then I think a lot of coaches run into that problem of how do they really grow their business? How do they scale things potentially? And for me, it's always been how do you look at sort of almost adjacent or industries that are somewhat similar but different and seeing what other people are doing? I think you've done a great job when it comes to real estate, coaching people from a business perspective. And it's hey, maybe here's an opportunity to pick someone's brain.
Yeah, no. And you had DM'd me about, hey, I'm thinking about doing some coaching stuff beyond just the typical coaching that, we're all so accustomed to hey, especially in sports. Sports is hey, we got to be in person. We got to, do these drills together. I got to watch you. I got to it's very hands-on versus the coaching I do is applicable to anyone, right? Yep. It's not dude, buying and selling a house is the same for everyone, And so, you're dude, I want to get into this online space and everything. I'm trying to figure it out. And I was oh, bro, I got you. But I also am trying to figure out my golf game.
Yeah. We're going to do that.
Yeah, we're going to do that.
Yeah.
So tell me this, give me a little backstory about how you even got into the position where guys like Tiger and DeChambeau wanted to hire you.
Yeah. I pretty early on, I knew I wanted to coach golf. I'm a first generation golfer, picked up the game kind of late.
Where'd you grow up?
LA.
Okay.
Yeah. I took up golf when I was 16, got obsessed with it, got a job at a golf course, picking up balls on the driving range. I was the guy in that cart picking up the balls that you always try to hit.
Trying to hit.
Yeah, that was me. So did that, just learned the game, got halfway decent at it. When I graduated undergrad, I was this is what I want to do. I traveled the country, working for different academies. In my mind, it's okay, go learn from the best that's out there. If I'm going to do this and be committed to being the best, I got to go learn from the best. Traveled around, ended up in Dallas, just whatever. Ventures took me there, different jobs. I went there to open up an academy was the primary reason. And
how old were you at the time?
26, maybe 25.
Okay,
26.
so pretty young.
Yeah, pretty young. And actually I went there to be a partner in an academy, and that first year there, I was working crazy, and I made $19,000. I made no money. I was making less than minimum wage because I was a partner in the academy, so I could actually get paid not less than minimum wage. And it's funny, I hear on the radio about a free poker league at a local place, at a local bar, and I started playing in this thing. It was on Sunday nights, and didn't know anybody out there, so I started playing this league. I've always loved math and science, whatever, and I play in this league and I end up winning player of the year in the league. And when that happens
in poker,
it's a free league. So if you did well in a tournament, they would give you gift certificates. When you're making $19,000, a $60 gift certificate at a restaurant
cool.
means something. It's like you're paying for your food, right? But the main prize was they flew you to Vegas to play in a tournament at the Bellagio.
Okay.
I went, did that, came in 4th place and won 40 grand in that tournament in one night. So doubled my like yearly salary.
I got a poker story to tell you after.
Okay, cool. So, broke away from the academy and just started to do my own thing. Built my own book, actually was playing poker, helping to kind of fund things for a little bit, and started to build like a nice following in Dallas. And then, and along the way, a guy named Noda Begay, who went to school with Tiger at Stanford, we had become friends. He lived in Dallas, and he's slowly kind of starting to see my reputation build in Dallas, starting to work with some better players, guys on like the Nationwide tour, I guess the web.com tour now.
Yep.
And about at the same time, I went to, started going to grad school for biomechanics, which is like its own crazy story. But go to grad school for biomechanics, publish some papers with the group there in some science journals. That gets traction in the teaching.
What were the papers? Were they about golf?
They were, yeah. So they were like kind of science. One was on like ground reaction forces. One was like, mechanically actually mapping out what a swing plane is. Like all these kind of almost catchphrase things that had been in golf for a long time, but people didn't really kind of like.
It wasn't like science yet.
Yeah, and that's actually what was like the driver of me going to grad school. It was like I had traveled the country, worked for all these different academies, and like awesome information, but you go to one guy who's like one of the top coaches in the world, and he's saying one thing, and another one who's another top coach saying almost like the opposite thing. It's like,
yeah, I know.
Like, what's happening? How do you sort of like make sense of all this? And to me, it's like you're trying to swing a golf club 100 plus miles an hour, and you're hitting a golf ball 300 plus yards. Might as well learn a little bit about physics, and then you're using your body to do it. So might as well learn a little bit about the body. And that's essentially what biomechanics is. It's kind of a little bit of physics and mechanical engineering type stuff, the body. That's essentially what you're studying. And then I try to, I've tried to take that as well as like traditional coaching, sort of mush them together. And then just the experience of teaching, and then also being around a lot of like great players, sort of put that all together. And that's, my philosophy in a nutshell. But with regards to Tiger, Noda was in Dallas. He's kind of following my career. He's following some of the research I'm doing. And, we just had developed like a good friendship. And he's like, man, I think you and Tiger would really get along well, have like a good sort of chemistry, working chemistry. And he introduced us, and it just evolved from there.
And what year was this?
2014.
2014.
Yeah.
So, and you were how old at that point? Like, how long you been doing it?
I guess probably around like 37 or so. It's kind of a big blur, but right around there. Yeah.
And so Tiger was probably around the same age?
Yeah, he's probably like 39. He was probably 39 or so.
Okay.
Yeah. And he'd already had like a ton of injuries. And really the goal was, in my mind, I think Tiger in 2000, let's say, ish, that time period, that's the best anybody's ever swung a golf club. Like that's the gold standard.
Yeah.
And just like his stats were obviously unbelievable, dominated the game. That is the gold standard. So it's not reinventing the wheel. It's saying, okay, look.
You did it before.
The precedent's set. You've done it before. But your body's different. You've gone through a ton of injuries, multiple surgeries. How do you get as close to that as possible within the constraints of what your body can currently do? Right. And that was the overall game plan. Obviously, once you get in it, you roll up your sleeves. There's all sorts of troubleshooting, probably with like any project, right? You have your overall kind of game plan you lay out. And then once you get into it, it's like, who knows what kind of curveball you're going to get thrown along the way.
Yeah. So many things to unpack there, and I want to get more into Tiger and what you guys were doing together. But back to your poker story. So there's a casino here called the Sahara, and it recently got remodeled, but back in the day, it was like the super old whatever casino. And I was 18 years old, and my buddies were like, hey, they have this poker tournament every day. It's like $40 buy-in, whatever. And I'm like 18, and they're like, they don't ID you or anything. And I was like, okay. So I show up to this poker tournament, I buy in, and I end up getting to the final table. And I'm like, dude, they're going to like card me if I win. And I was like, then my competitive nature took over. And I was like, I don't care. I'm going to win. And so I freaking just keep taking people out left and right. And then I get heads up, and I'm like, dude, I don't know if I should win or not. And he had a 2-to-1 chip advantage at the time. And sure enough, I just kept going all in and stealing his blinds, and he got pissed. Finally, I went all in, and because I'd done it so many times in a row, he just thought I was bluffing, but I had pocket aces.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh wow. The one time he calls.
He goes, call. And he's
sick of it.
Yeah. He was so pissed because I stole so many blinds.
Right.
And he goes, call. And then he had like ace king. And I was like,
oh, no way.
Yeah. And I was
so he's not even like calling you light. He's just like, I got a hand.
Yeah. He's like, I finally got a hand.
Yeah.
You're done.
Oh,
and I was
geez.
like, okay, boom.
That's hilarious.
Pocket rockets. And then, so obviously I won.
That's it. That's such a cooler for him. It's
Yeah.
cooler hand-wise and also situational, right? Like,
Yeah. So I won. And then I, everybody's like, dude, congrats, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, dude, somebody's going to card me. And
You're lucky you look old for your age.
Well, at that time, I definitely
No,
didn't look old.
being sarcastic.
Yeah, I know. I definitely don't look old either. So, and I have a beard now, so I look a little older now. But nonetheless, I ended up going to the chip counter and stuff, and I was like just waiting for somebody to say something, and like I won like $2,000, and like I just walked out.
No way.
Yeah. So that was
Good for you, man.
I'm 1 for 1 in my poker career, and like I retired from competitive poker. But yeah, so that was fun. But going back to sports, it's funny because I grew up in this era, in baseball where it was like old school, right? It's like, hey, we swing down on the ball, we, do this and all this stuff, right? And then as I was going through my career, as I got into college, analytics started to become a really big thing. And so like you started to see Moneyball, right? I got drafted by the Oakland A's. So, you see all these statistics where they're like, well, actually, this is the right way to do things, and that's the right way, and this pitcher's good, and that guy's not good, and this guy's overrated, this guy's underrated. And I was like, oh, so this is like what they're looking for in a baseball player. And so I started to try and tailor my game towards like on base percentage and walking more and, all those things. And then as I got into my career, everything I had learned started to change. So they were like, well, actually, you're supposed to hit fly balls and like swing up on the ball because the ball's coming in downward.
Yeah.
When everyone else, your entire life tells you to swing down on the ball.
Backspin, right?
Whatever old school philosophy.
Yeah.
And then you start seeing,
and now it's about having the bat move through like the zone that the ball's traveling.
Yeah,
for
like
a
that
longer
gives you
period
the
of time.
that gives you the biggest margin for error.
Yeah,
right.
Makes sense.
And biomechanics started coming out and all these things, and people started to realize like, oh wow, this is the proper way to swing. And pitchers started throwing harder than ever because they started to really optimize what they were doing. And like all these big things, like there's one in Dallas, I forget what it's called.
Was it a Driveline baseball place?
Yep, Driveline, like in Seattle or something.
Yeah, I think they have a place in Phoenix too.
Yep. And so they're just doing all these biomechanic things, making people throw gas.
Like crazy spin rates, like coming up with new pitches.
Yeah, like spin rate was never a thing. And now it's like, oh, well, this guy's spin rate is this. Like, we dude, when I played, you wanted the ball to sink. And like, that was what we wanted, two seam and whatever. Now they're like, no, we want our balls to like spin really fast and like not sink.
Yeah, it's wild. It almost gives a visual of it like raising, right? A little bit, yeah.
So long story short, like I watched the evolution of science and tradition, and like now everybody's basically like a science guy. But even though like somebody can tell you this is what's supposed to happen and is happening, what you feel is so different.
Oh, 100%. And this is where I think when people try to make like sort of like the science versus say like the more feel or intuitive aspect of a sport as like mutually exclusive to each other, they're just not. To me, it's always about like bringing those together. Like it's how do you have both those places work together?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think too many people have made it out. It's like, I've gotten this sometimes, like you're super technical. It's like, no, like to me, it's like, it's helpful to maybe understand it, but at the end of the day, you're still communicating to the athlete in the language of feel. Cause that's what's going to connect with them.
Yeah.
So you might have things running in the background of like, whatever it is. And in golf, we use, Doppler radar, there's systems called like TrackMan or Foresight, things like that. And, we're looking at that stuff, and also biomechanics, 3D motion, et cetera. But that's like behind the scenes in the processing. That's not necessarily what actually gets to the athlete. Yeah. I would imagine baseball is somewhat similar.
100%. I mean, like at the end of the day, even knowing what I know, it'd be like, oh, okay, let me try and feel how this is supposed to feel. And like, you can do it and then you lose it. I'm like, dang, dude. And then I can do it in practice, but then I can't do it in the game. And then just like sports are really hard. It's unlike business. Business to me, I say this all the time, is like 1,000 times easier, because if you tell me how to do something, it's like, all right, well, I'll just go freaking do it. Like, it's not.
It's pretty clear. Like,
yeah,
if A, then B, and like, this
is the task.
Yeah,
just do it, and you'll be good.
Yeah, it's like, here's the stuff you got to do. To me, it's almost similar to like, say, like, working out or dieting, whatever. It's like, look, if you eat like this amount of protein, this amount of calories,
you're good.
You're pretty much good. Like, obviously, that's not exactly right, but like for the most part. But yeah, with golf or baseball, it's like you could do everything your coach tells you to do, and
you're still messed up. Yeah. So you start working with Tiger, and it's later in his career. Like, what was he trying to learn from you? Like, why you compared to? I mean, he had Butch Harmon, he had like all these other guys. Like, did he just wanted the biomechanics, and your name was growing, and you were up and coming?
Yeah, I think a little bit of like my background, and then a lot of it was just us having met a few times and talking through things, and just feeling like we were very much on the same page with where this should go. Again, it's not like I'm teaching him like anything particularly new. Is more of like, hey, look, this was where you were at. That's the gold standard, but how do we get you back there? So like, as you mentioned, you have your feels, which are subjective, and you could be thinking you're doing one thing or feeling like you're doing one thing, and that doesn't necessarily mean that's objectively what you're doing. And the golf ball doesn't know your swing thought or your feel. It knows what you're doing. So having someone who has that eye, has the understanding of the body and some of the mechanic stuff to help a person, even if they know exactly where they want to go and they've already been there before, it's not always like this perfectly clear path of like how to get there from a feel perspective.
Well, I'll say even too, like, so we have a lot of coaching in, our whole Wealthy World ecosystem. And, like the newbies, it's a pretty easy sell. It's like, yo, you don't know anything. Like, we need to get you up to speed so you can start making some money and building your foundation. But, sometimes we'll get people who, have already had a lot of success, and they're like, what do I need this coaching for? Like, I'm already doing well, right? And it goes back to, if you're somebody who, I might not teach you something you didn't already know, but you're not doing it, right? Like, I'm having to reinforce what you should already know, but for whatever reason, you can't feel it or see it, and you need an outside perspective that you're going to trust that is telling you the right thing to do.
100%. Like, I mean, I think coaching of any sorts, it's not just a matter of like disseminating knowledge or information to a person. It's actually getting them from point A to point B, which isn't always just a function of like, here's the information. And that's the art of it.
It's actually very rarely information.
Yeah. That's the art of it. That's the psychology of it. That's like knowing the person you're coaching. It does have an art form to it. And like, I think how you said before with like business, maybe there's things a little bit more straightforward. You can knock off a bunch of stuff with just like the information, but at the high level, the people who are trying to push those small edges, it does become much more nuanced than just a passing on of information.
Yeah. So what was Tiger like as, I guess, a professional? Like, what did you notice from him? Like, when you're working for him, like, wow, this guy's like, that's why he's Tiger.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously so talented, right? Like,
just naturally talented.
Yeah, his connection to his body, like he was able to feel things. Like he's just got that connection to his own body, the coordination of it. That's like really not like I've seen before. Just a really like strong intuition for what his body is doing and that spatial awareness. But I mean, like, I wouldn't even say that's the talent. So, I worked with him when he was really going through some injury stuff, and he was in a lot of pain. His back was giving him trouble. He got it fused a few years later. But man, the guy just never gave up. Like, I mean, you could take whatever percentage of the population, put him in a situation, you've become one of the best athletes of all time. You've got, more than enough money you'll ever spend. You have tons of injuries. Like, most people would be like, you know what, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good. And he just didn't give up. And then he won the Masters in 2019, which, to fans watching that, it was obviously like such a remarkable thing. To someone who saw like how much he had to fight during windows, it was unbelievable. It was one of the most special things I've ever.
Yeah, that was probably like the most improbable thing ever.
It was crazy. And the guy just really has, like, I feel like, I've worked with some great players, and I feel like I learn You coach them and you're helping them reach their goals. But I learn just as much from coaching people as they do from me, right? Well, not even just like the top golfers, but like everybody. I think that coaching is its own loop where you're constantly learning from the people you're coaching as well. But with him in particular, just like a true commitment and spirit of not giving up was like, is never experienced it before.
Yeah. I mean, like even to see him, compete in the Masters again this year, like his leg almost got amputated.
So last year at the Masters, I was there with Bryson DeChambeau, and Bryson had the tee time right before Tiger. And, this is like the first event that Tiger's really coming back after his accident. People's like, I can't believe he's playing the Masters. And so this is on Thursday. So I'm with Bryson. He's done with his warm up. He goes to the first tee, and I just kind of just stayed really walking up to the tee with Bryson, his caddy, and then went up there and then went under the rope to get there's an area behind the first tee at Augusta where some people sit. But as a spectator, you can't really get into it. I probably shouldn't be saying this. But I got to this area that was a perfect view of the first tee. And because I knew Tiger was coming through, and I just sat there and watched him come through, knowing what he's been through, knowing the accident he'd been in, or the year before, and to watch him tee off right there, it was a really, really kind of special thing to see.
I was reading, someone said a screw came out of his skin or something.
It was Jason Day who said that, I think, or at least it was reported that he said that. I don't know if he actually said that or not, but
it's crazy.
Yeah.
Competing in just metal popping out of your body.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah. I think, to your point with coaching being this loop, I agree. The more people I've coached, the better I've gotten at my craft, because, I'll be talking to people and I'll notice similar problems that all these people have. And I'm like, man, dude, this is I keep seeing this over and over again. Let me create something to solve this if this is constantly a problem. And I think that's probably how all these golf training aids get made. They keep seeing the same, I can't fix my slice. And then freaking they make another thing.
This one's going to fix it.
Yeah, this is it. But yeah, I think as I coach more, and that's why they always say, if you're trying to learn something, go and try and teach someone how to do it. Yeah. Even if you don't know, because if you can't properly explain it, then you don't know it still.
Yeah.
So, hey, if you're looking to grow your real estate investing business, whether you're just getting started trying to get your first deal or you're trying to scale and get to the next level, you need to join us at Wealthy Investor. We've got events every single quarter that are absolutely crazy. We've got online coaching programs where we have Zoom calls, a community every single week. We give you everything you need to know to start your business, scripts, processes, SOPs, all of it. It's for you so that you can dominate. So if you want to learn more about how to join our community and be mentored by me and some of our top coaches and be around other students who are absolutely crushing it, go to wealthyinvestor.com, apply for a free call with my team. Once again, wealthyinvestor.com, apply for a call today. But you mentioned DeChambeau. So for those who don't know, Bryson was the longest hitter on the PGA, and he's competing in the long drive and stuff now. But he's kind of notorious for always tinkering and trying to get swing speed and science and biomechanics and all this stuff. So I can see why he came to you.
Yeah, I mean, Bryson's he's just a very curious, deep thinker of the game, really trying to figure it out. And we just had a lot of, I guess, similar passions for the game and some of the mysteries of the game, and just was it was a really good working relationship to try to figure some stuff out.
What was the big thing he was trying to learn?
Well, he had a window where he was increasing his club head speed. I don't know if anybody at that level has made that big of a jump in their club head speed before. So there's that aspect of it. And then just where does shot control come from? That's sort of the big mystery in golf. You can get a 10 handicap who's got pretty good club head speed and they can hit a drive right down the middle. If you didn't know any better, you'd be like, that's a tour guy. But then you watch him play a round of golf, and
that's what people think of me for one swing.
But that's the mystery of the game, right? You have that potential to hit a shot that looks like a guy on the PGA Tour.
Yep.
But then you hit the other shots that
aren't.
Yeah.
Then I go OB, and I'm now I'm double bogey. I just cranked that one. I outdrove the tour guy.
Yeah. What's happening?
And then I'm OB.
But what's happening is actually a huge part of the research. I'm super into, Bryson's super into. So it's one of those things that we're trying to figure out, where does that come from? And it's,
what do you think?
Oh man, that's outside. That's a rabbit hole. But we can. It's I mean, there's some stuff that like we've been looking at. Like, yeah, I'm partnered with Ping and the engineers at Ping, and they have an amazing R&D team for developing clubs. Like, talk about a company that's so committed to like figuring stuff out. Like, they're amazing. Their R&D team. There's a guy named Dr. Paul Wood who has a PhD studying solar flares in mathematics. Super smart dude. Another guy named Eric Henriksen who's got a PhD in aerospace engineering. And I had this hypothesis like a decade ago about where this idea of like consistency or repeatability comes from. And they have this uber high speed 3D motion capture system that we've been collecting data on and processing some of the data in a way to look at like this question. And we're starting to unravel it. I wouldn't say it's fully ready yet, but the overall idea is that certain techniques that exist, and this is not things that you look at like, oh, what's the club plane or the club face? It's not like any sort of superficial aesthetic. It's more of like what's happening at the very bottom of the swing. And there's certain things that may be happening that essentially make a person or their ball flight be less sensitive to any error that happens. So the traditional model of like, the traditional way people think of like consistency is you got to be more consistent. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I don't know. I know 10 handicaps, 15 handicaps. It's like their swing looks more or less the same all the time. They're actually pretty consistent.
They're always a 10.
Yeah. And they look the same. It's not like they're making one swing in a different, like it's kind of like their swing.
My problem is I could be scratch and then I could be 10.
Right. But it's the ball flight. So you're actually probably pretty consistent with your motion. Like if someone were to see your swing from like 50 yards away, they'd be like, that's Ryan.
Yeah.
They're going to kind of know.
The swing itself isn't inconsistent.
But the ball flight's inconsistent.
Yeah. I freaking scoop them and launch them super high. Then I hook some. Then I'll fade a couple.
Not intentionally. You want to think of it as intentional, right? So the idea is that the better techniques actually make an individual they're less sensitive to like the variance that happens in the world, like the different lies, whatever, and the ball flight just doesn't get as deviant from any slight.
Yeah,
this is a rabbit hole. This is a rabbit hole.
I'm glad you actually brought that, and I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of golf people that watch this, so it's not gonna be just the business podcast. So I will get a little technical because I want to know. So sorry, people who want to know business. So I actually thought about this too, where I was like, man, golf has got to be easier than baseball because in baseball, you know, you have this pitcher who's trying to get you out. You don't know where the ball's going to go. You don't know what he's throwing. And then you have these defenders who are also trying to get you out. Like everyone's against you. There's 9 people against you right now. And I was like, baseball's way harder. And then like I started playing golf and I'm like, dude, the ball sits there. It doesn't move. You have no one against you. It's just you. And then like I started to play, I'm like, well, I got a different lie every time. I'm hitting through different rough and different grass. And then like I go to the East Coast and the ground and the grass is totally different. And then like I shoot a good shot and then I get a bad bounce and then it's freaking in the bunker. And I'm like, dude, there's a lot of things that are like I thought golf wasn't variable until you actually play the course and you're like, dude, every shot's different.
Yeah. Or even on like the range, hit like, go hit 100 balls and there's still going to be quite a bit of like variation to what the balls are doing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what grabs a lot of people about the game is that one, you hit a good shot. It's like a very visceral experience. It feels like it's a cool experience to like hit a really solid golf shot.
Yep.
And then the mystery of, well, why did I just hit that shot? Or, you know, some guy goes out and plays a round of golf and makes a hole in one. Like do that every time you're the best golfer in the world, right? Like,
right. So
it's like, how is it that people hit these incredible shots and then they hit like these wildly weird shots that, you know, break a window in the house, like adjacent to the fairway. So like, that's one of the great sort of mysteries of the game that I think really.
You said it's happening at the bottom of the swing. What exactly is happening that creates inconsistency?
I mean, it's pretty technical, but it's saying what is the change of what that club head is doing during that interval at the bottom of the swing where impact could happen.
So just like this window of impact.
Yeah. So it's like, exactly. So it's like you have a window. It's really, I mean, you could say it's really small. It's probably even smaller than that.
Okay.
And it's just saying during that interval, what is the change of the club head direction, the change of the face angle, all the things that the ball like would react to.
To jump to the conclusion, would the most accurate strikers have the face be the same throughout? Or are they moving in a certain way?
Potentially the first one. And then the other one would be that what the club head and face are doing during that interval gives you maybe different impacts, but all those impacts create a fairly usable ball flight.
Right, because if I came in like this, I'm going to draw.
Yep. or you could be doing it in a way where it's like if you catch it early in the arc, it's, you know, a 10-yard draw that ends up on the target. If you catch it a little bit later, now it's a 5-yard draw, but it ends up on the target. So
you get the same result.
Yeah, more or less the ball ends up in the same place. Yeah, and so like the kind of because it's somewhat abstract. The analogy I have like given people would be, let's say like the traditional kind of model would be, let's say we're in Vegas, right? Let's say I had a die for like craps, right? 6 sides to it. Let's say, you know, 5 sides of the die say bad shot, and then 1 side says good shot. Okay, so I'm like the 15 handicapper, and I go up there, I roll a good shot, and I don't know what the die says. All I know is like how it ends up on the table. Okay, good shot. So I don't know what the sides are, and I'm like, oh, what did I do right there? I had my elbow here, got on my head still. Bad shot. Oh, what happened? What did I do on that one that I rolled a good shot? Bad shot. Oh, right. So that would be like, you know, the not so good player. Let's call it the 15 handicap, and then you get, let's say like a Lee Trevino, some great ball striker. Now his die, again, he doesn't know what the sides say. He just knows the outcome.
Right.
His die would be 5 sides, good shot, 1 side, bad shot. And he's there, good shot, whoosh, good shot, shot tequila, good shot, right? To him, it's just like, it's easy. The game's easy. But just he's playing with a die that fundamentally.
That has all good shots. Very few bad.
So then if you're building someone a golf swing, in a sense, you're just trying to change their die to where now all of a sudden the probability of them, you know, rolling a good shot gets better.
You want first off, you want a repeatable swing, no matter if it's good or bad, because that's like the first. Because if somebody swings different every time, that's
you know, this is where you get a guy like say Bubba Watson. He's hitting 1 shot left to right, another shot right to left, so he's not really repeatable. But whatever his intention is, there's not a lot of variance from that. So I don't actually know that the repeat. I mean, yes, more or less, sure. But you can still hit different shots. So I think that's where the model of like, I'm going to be consistent is a little bit like off. It's like, it's more about, have you developed a motion that doesn't make you so sensitive to like any changes to where you're hitting shots that are very different than what was outside your intention.
So with consistency, this is such a cool thing because I look at this in all aspects. Because I remember when I was playing baseball, there were guys, it did not matter who was pitching, how they felt, what was going on. These guys were just ultra consistent. And if they ever did go through a slump, they were quick to get out of it. Like they knew how to get their swing back on track, get to the next game, next pitch, whatever. And other guys like would be lost for a long time. And you're like, dude, this guy's like in a 10-game slump. Like, figure it out, dude. It's like, you don't see the most consistent guys do that. Like, and then they'll go on a hot streak and be like unreal. Like Scotty Scheffler last year, right? And like I watched that, and then I watched you know, people who are really good in my field now of business and content. And you're like, man, you see these guys who are the top content creators and influencers and coaches, they're consistent, dude. Video, day in, day out. They're on their game. You don't feel good every day. I don't feel good every day, but like the content still goes out. Like I still do my job. I still come out to play and it's great. And then you see guys who are like, they'll make a freaking great video or have a great deal. And then like next year, they're just, something happened and they're done. You're like, wow, you know, so this concept of figuring out consistency in any area of life is interesting. And that's why it's interesting to me too, when I see people who are like super fit and then they're fat. And I'm just like, how? Like, how do you not have that consistency? Because I've been the same weight for like 13 years now. Like I just stay consistent with working out and eating a diet I know I can be consistent with. It's not, I'm definitely not like the best diet, but like I know it gives me the look that I'm looking for. So, you know, when it comes to golf, I think about consistency as like, okay, well, you do have your swing. Then you have like the mental game of it. You got to be mentally tough and be able to get to the next, because like you'll see a guy hit a bad shot and then their whole round is over, right? And I'm just thinking, what do you see besides mechanics leading to like the top performers? What else is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like if you were to say like this bucket of consistency, or this category of consistencies, there's lots of little buckets you can put into, and one of them is just the mindset. And how do you show up sort of consistently with what you're doing, the energy you're doing it, having a realistic game plan that you know you can more or less execute day to day, as opposed to like kind of what you're talking about with the diet. it's funny. I had this conversation the other day about like 70. Are you familiar with like 75 hard?
Yep, with Andy. Yep.
Who's that?
Andy Frisella.
Okay. So I don't know about, I don't know Andy, but like, it sounds cool. I don't know anybody who's done it. I know a bunch of people who've like tried it. Yeah. I see it on Instagram and they're like day 44. And then like,
they're done.
I don't even remember anymore. I was telling my friend, I was like, I'm going to do 90 easy. And basically the idea is I was like, cause like work out 2 times for 45 minutes a day. Like, yeah, in theory, but I'm busy, man. That's hard to do when you're on the road every day. Right. I don't drink. That one's easy, whatever, like diet. But to me, like, I'm like, I want to outline a handful of things that I know, like, if I don't do them, like, it is just me being like lazy, right?
Yeah.
Like whatever, work out for 30 minutes, have the diet more or less. These are the constraints that are realistic. Whatever, I get to pick them. But like, just do it for 90 days consistently, because that's actually something that you can do indefinitely, right? So to me, it's like I was the running joke, because I'm calling it like 90 easy that I'm going to do. So But I think that's part of it. Like, with like say high performers, they are very consistent with the execution of their plan, but their plan usually is something that's like realistic.
It's attainable.
And then if they have extra energy or extra time, whatever, they do a little extra.
Right.
But it's like their baseline is defined by them, and it's defined in a way that they know that they can do consistently, because that consistency of showing up for your particular game plan is what's going to give you the best chance of, at the very minimum, having good information to make adjustments. So, you have a game plan, and it may or may not be the exact game plan to get you to your goals. But if you're not consistent to at least try it out, you don't have information to see if it's a good game plan or not. You haven't gained any information because you didn't do it, right?
Right.
But at least if you do it for a window of time, you can go back and be like, okay, that did work this way or didn't work in that way, and you can make the appropriate update to keep refining your game plan to eventually get you to your goal. But that consistency to have it tried out is what allows you to get the information to keep improving the game plan.
Yeah, it's funny. I was literally just telling one of my good buddies, his name is Blake. He sometimes co-hosts Wealthy Wednesdays with me, a live show we do. And I was like, bro, I'm tired of you talking about like making your course. Just make it, get the data, like, and learn from it. Like, I'm tired of like prepping for this thing. Like, let's just do it and then get data,
It's 100%. Like, it's like the reality of it is, the best game plan you can come up with is never going to be perfect. It's going to be wrong at some capacity, but it's like, you got to get into it to get the information to figure out how you can refine that.
Yeah.
And if you're just like constantly preparing for it, it's like, well, you're never going to actually get the right thing. You're going to have to fix it at some point anyway. So you might as well start that process of trial and error, and then, updating as early as you can.
Random question as it relates to consistency. I know mindset plays a huge role in natural talent and, repeatability. I've played with some pros, and one thing I noticed about them was like, and I don't know if it was just those people I was playing with, but like their ball flight was like always straight. Like, when I play with amateurs, like a lot of them obviously have slice and hooks, but like even the good amateurs, like even myself, like I always have like a nice draw. And when I played with the pros, I'm like, dude, these guys are like hitting them dead straight. There's like no side spin. Is that typical of the PGA, or do guys just play stock shot draws every time, or how do they go? Yeah,
I mean, you see guys hit pretty big draw. Like a guy like Kenny Perry, Tom Lehman, they drew the ball a fair amount. There was guys who faded the ball a fair amount. Bruce Litsky's kind of like an old school player that was known for really fading it.
Like Rahm fades it, right?
Rahm fades it. So there's a lot of guys on tour who actually have a very distinct shape to their shot. And then they're just always doing that. For the most part. I mean, you do have guys who work the ball. They'll hit a draw one shot and a fade the next shot. And they do that. I guess Rory's always trying to draw it, right? Yeah, but he kind of, early in his career, definitely drew it a bunch. Moved away from it a bit for a while. Right now, I think his ball flight's maybe a little bit of a draw again. But, I mean, he's been on both sides of it. But, yeah, he definitely early on in his career drew it a bunch. So it's kind of all over the map. There isn't like a ball flight that you see is like necessarily predominant on tour. Biomechanically, why do you think a guy like Rory, or even like a lot of these new young guys who are not big dudes, these guys are like 5'10", wiry, and they crank them? Like, why are they able to crank them like Bryson? And Bryson's like way bigger. Yeah, I mean, just like the good technique, the ability to create that momentum from the ground, like the way they use their feet and their legs, and then transfer to that club head is the biggest sort of component of club head speed. Now, if you can do things really efficiently and you're a little bit bigger and a little bit stronger, yeah,
you're gonna do better.
Yeah, and you know, Bryson's super efficient and he's a strong dude, so he's the longest guy on tour. But is he like so much longer than everybody else? I mean, no. Like Rory's very, very long, and he's not, you know, the same size as Bryson.
Yeah,
because you know it's a part of it, but the biggest part of it's going to be the technique, the efficiency of how they can create that momentum and get it to the club.
So do you think like Rory, basically because of his size disadvantage, Rory's just more efficient with his body than Bryson? Would that be fair to say?
No, I don't, because I think Bryson's very efficient too. So if Bryson was like say less efficient, he wouldn't hit it nearly as far as he does. So most of the guys on tour are very, very efficient.
Yeah.
And I you know, it's not one of those things where because of his size, Rory had to be more efficient. He is extremely efficient. Again, most of the guys on the PGA Tour are very efficient. There's guys who are not, you know, really big dudes who are obviously like really inefficient and they're not on tour, right? So he's just one of those people who, for whatever reason, figured it out at a very young age how to move this golf club
really fast.
Yeah.
And square it up.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you think of those long drive guys? Because like when I watch their swings, it's freaking crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah, I mean, they're all, you know,
like Kyle Berkshire, like watching his swing.
Oh, it's wild.
Bro, his like left foot just is backwards.
Yeah.
Like,
and a lot of guys on tour do that too. That's not necessarily a long drive solo. It's an important aspect of creating speed. It doesn't get in the way of consistency. Like there's a lot of very great drivers of the ball who move their left foot away from the target like that. Yeah. So that's not something that I would say, oh, it's good for long drive, but not good for like say competitive golf. It's got nothing to do with nothing. It's just it's got something to do with club at speed, but doesn't interfere with consistency. But yeah, you know, Kyle, a good friend of mine, Martin Bergmeyer, he won the long drive thing this last year. You know, these guys, like they train crazy hard and they're optimizing for a different game than trying to shoot a score. And, you know, they figure out things within the context of that goal of just hitting as far as you can.
Why aren't more of these guys on tour though? Like that's what I've wondered.
Because they've one, it's just not the goal they're optimizing for, right? So like maybe they should, and who knows what would happen if they did. But
because I saw like an article the other day about just these long drive guys and like how far they're hitting them. And it was like drawing a parallel to baseball. And they were like, imagine if there was people in the major leagues who could throw 115 miles an hour. Like how good would they be in the major leagues? Like they wouldn't have to like spot it the way that others do. Like they could just throw it.
Right.
And they're like, that is what's available in golf. Like there are guys who can hit it 450 yards. Like
right.
It's crazy. Like they're hitting it 100 yards further than everyone else.
Right.
And they should have a massive advantage. Like,
yeah. I mean, it's all depending on what the game is, right? So it's like, you know, with golf, obviously you got a chip, you got a putt, you got a short game. How wide, narrow?
But if you're always having a short game, everything is a chip.
Sure. But how wide is the fairway? So like, you know, for that baseball analogy, let's say you were like, you know, had a really like high pitch velocity, but let's say the strike zone was now like super small.
Yeah.
Right? Like the best pitcher in the world might be someone who's like can whatever. I mean, who knows what it is, right? But it's like as the game changes, the skill sets that are the most important for that new game can be different. And with golf, you know, it just happens to be that having a certain amount of control of the golf ball within the certain kind of rules in the game, the courses they play, that is a higher priority than necessarily hit it really far. If the fairways were all like super, super wide, maybe you would see
more of those guys. Yeah. And I guess being under pressure and all those things play a different role. It's crazy to me that do you believe the phrase like that you drive for show, putt for dough?
I mean, it's cliche, so it's going to be inherently not exactly right, but statistically, driving is actually worth more for the score than putting is.
Yeah, I was reading that like the analytics are saying like I forget what they call it, strokes gained or something.
So Mark Brody, he's a professor at Columbia, good friend of mine, awesome, smart dude, came up with strokes gained, and you know he's written a bunch of stuff, wrote a book many years ago. And ball striking, I mean, putting still is really important.
Yeah.
So that's why it's sort of like a cliche thing.
But I guess like maybe the reason why they say it, and you would know, is like because they're all good drivers, they're all good approach players, and so it's usually decided by putts.
Yeah, I mean, look, his analysis is, are there differences with guys in terms of driving? And there are.
Yeah.
So like there is actually like big differences that you will see on the PGA Tour in terms of what contributes to their overall score. There's big differences in their ability to drive the ball. So that actually makes up for more of the differences.
So who are like the leaders of strokes gained in driving? It's got to be like Rory.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't looked at like say this year in particular, but like Rory's always at the top of it. You know, Bryson was always very high up there. A guy like John Rahm's typically pretty high up there. Usually the guys who are high up,
you're going to see like these are the guys who are the top of the world too.
Yeah, you know, very often the more dominant players of every generation were exceptional drivers of the ball. Now there's some exceptions to that like rule, but like Nicklaus was like one of the best drivers of the ball of all time. You know, Tiger earlier in his career was an incredible driver of the ball.
Yeah. Explain
Rory.
to me how a guy like Scotty Scheffler could just like essentially come out of nowhere and like be the best.
Yeah. I mean, he's young, so he didn't really come out of nowhere. He just, he was in college. He wasn't out on the PGA. He wasn't a professional golfer, but he had the skill set. It's like, you know, did Tiger come out of nowhere? I mean, he was one of the best collegiate golfers, right?
Yeah.
And then very early on, had success on the PGA Tour. And, you know, I think Scotty's one of those guys who just really figured out his groove on the PGA Tour at a very young age.
Right. Are there any swings you watch where you're just like, I don't know how that guy's like so good?
Those are the swings that are the most important for me to watch.
Really?
So yeah, because I mean, I think like in general, like in life, we can have these, I don't know what do you call it?
Biases.
Confirmation bias. Yeah. Where it's like, you think, okay, this is important or this is important. And you almost like cherry pick data to fit that. And it's like, okay, fine. But if you're really trying to figure things out, you need to find observation that say deviates from what you think is good, deviates from your hypothesis of whatever.
Like this could prove me wrong. Why?
And that's where you learn the most. So there's a guy out on tour with a swing that's a little different, that the things that I think are really important, and he's like not doing it. To me, that's where I have the biggest opportunity to learn.
Yeah.
And I think philosophically, that's like an overall good mindset, at least for me,
I agree.
in life for learning. It's like, don't go find the stuff that supports what you already think is true. Like, that's easy. Go find the stuff that deviates from what you think is important, that's still getting the results you want to get. And it's like, that's where the real learning can happen for you.
So like for a guy like you who's been coaching so long now, and you obviously already know a ton, you have this foundation. Like, how often are you also, I mean, you're learning while you're coaching and just being around,
yeah.
But like, are you just researching papers and watching videos and like just trying to get other perspective? Like, what do you do?
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, you go through phases with that, but like, yeah, all the above. I mean, for me, like the practice of coaching, it's an awesome endeavor in terms of like you're constantly learning. Also, I'm also seeking out coaches for whatever things.
Yeah.
Like I think that sort of that relationship of having a coach and then coaching, to me, it's like all great stories, right? You got Yoda and Luke Skywalker, Harry Potter and Dumbledore, right? It's like that relationship of like being both sides of it, like, you know, being both the hero, you know, whatever's that hero's journey, being both the hero and the guide in your life. It's like there's people that you're sort of the guide to. You are the Yoda to whoever you're training, but then you go find your own personal Yoda and you become Luke Skywalker and you go through your own process of learning stuff. So to me, like that's something that I feel like I'll do till the day I die, which is both hope, you know, mentor other people, coach other people, as well as find people that can help me evolve and learn in whatever it is that's sort of piquing my curiosity at that particular window of my life.
Yeah. It seems like all of sports is going through the last like 15 years, like this revolution with all the data and statistics and biomechanics that we now have available. You know, I saw it in my own baseball career, but like you know, the more I get into golf and the more I talk to people, they're like, oh yeah, no, since like TrackMan came on, like we now know a lot of things that were wrong that we used to think were right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say that, like, if you were to put, say, a golfer, whatever, or baseball, but let's just say golf because I know golf better. and I said better because I don't know golf. That's to me that level of sort of like still like knowing you don't know, right? But like if you're to take like all the stuff, 3D motion, force plates, TrackMan, name it, that exists right now, and you were to measure a golfer, like you're still only measuring such a small percentage of what's actually at play. And that's where I think, in my opinion, the best coaches and then obviously the best learners, you sort of preserve this like wonder and this curiosity in the endeavor. You may know a lot of stuff, what's available to know at that moment, but still in terms of the overall universe of what could be uncovered, it's usually a very small percentage.
So one of my biggest problems when I was playing baseball was that, like you, I'm constantly curious and I want to learn and I want to try new things. And people see that in business every day. Like I'm always launching new things and trying new things and constantly trying to learn. I read a lot of books and all of that. And in baseball, it kind of hurt me being a deep thinker because I would constantly be tweaking my swing. And then, you're in the game and you're thinking about mechanics instead of thinking about just competing and playing. And, the best players I saw, they weren't thinking about mechanics. They were just out there playing and reacting to the game and, all that stuff. And in my mind, I'm like, but if I can just get like a little better and like try, like this is going to unlock the secret to my game.
Yeah. It's tough, right? So I think there's a lot in that and that sort of like thought, because I think especially with sports, like with other stuff, I'm sure, but like in sports in particular, you have this like risk cost, like analysis you're starting to do. So you're trying to do. So for example, let's say you're on the PGA Tour and you're ranked 100th in the world. Okay. If you're in an effort to try to get better, I want to get top 50, top 25 in the world. In an effort to get better, if you start tweaking and making changes, you could very easily lose your job.
Yeah.
You could get outside the 125. You don't got a job anymore. Yeah. So the risk is really high right in that window. Now, if you're ranked 500th in the world,
you have no risk.
There's no risk, right?
Yeah.
So now if you're a baseball guy and let's say you're already really good and you're constantly tweaking, then that's kind of risky, right? But if you're like, say, and I don't know exactly the details of your situation, but let's say you're in AA baseball and you're not quite at that level, it's like there's also the cost of doing nothing, right?
Yeah.
So if you just said like, look, I'm not going to do anything, you might have just stayed right there. You actually might have been not as good, right? So you might have been in a spot where intuitively you're like, I got to roll the dice a little bit. I got to experiment a little bit to get to that level.
Yep.
Now, if someone is already really, really, really good, let's say a Bryson, and they have that curiosity and they want to tweak to get better, but the risk is at a level where like, look, if you get worse, you could lose your job.
You just signed a $100 million deal. You don't need to be
right. And that's where you got to be careful. And you got to compartmentalize it, and you got to have like your own sort of set of strategies to try to like, hopefully create a baseline that you don't get too past. Yeah, you're trying to get some upside, but you want to have, some kind of like stop sort of things that are in place to help protect against.
Yeah, and that was my mindset. I was in the minor leagues. I'm like, look, I ain't where I want to be. I got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Let's roll.
And that's probably the right choice at that point.
Yeah.
Because
even right now in my golf game, right, I'm not competing for anything. So like literally I don't care. I'm like, I'll try any swing, anything, like let's roll. Like I want to be the best I can be.
Yeah.
And
yeah, exactly.
There's no risk.
There's no risk. Now, if you like have this incredible business and you got like a ton of sort of money saved up, whatever, and you're like, I'm going to invest in all these experimental things, all of my net worth, it's probably not the greatest choice, right? Like,
yeah.
But like if you're like early on an entrepreneur, you can probably take on some more risk early on to try to figure some stuff out.
So like, this is an interesting example, right? Because like as an entrepreneur and a business person, as an athlete, you go through ups and downs, right? And so like you enter different stages of your career where like, hey, later in your career, you're usually going to be less risky because you've established more. And then like I see a guy like Tiger who's later in his career, but now like, he hasn't been playing at the level that he used to play. So it's like, to me, I'm like, he has less risk now because like
100%.
Just dude, try anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Like another guy you're working with, Jason Day, like what's his mindset these days? Because I mean, like you talk about a guy who was, a world number one, and then had a lot of injuries, very similar career arc maybe to Tiger too. And now he's like really getting back into the swing of things finally.
Yeah, he's playing great. But he's just he's so talented, works so hard. I mean, talk about a guy who loves the game. He loves competing, loves golf.
I've seen a lot of his YouTube videos where he's like, I think it's maybe for TaylorMade or something. And like, he's very like technical and like, I like listening to what he says.
Yeah. He's super into just golf. He just loves golf. He's such a great like person. and he's had some back injuries, whatever. Like injuries are so hard to figure out exactly where they comes from. Like anybody who says like I got the, it's like probably not. So you're trying to like create a team with that have a lot of like sort of good background, good knowledge, etc. He's got a great team of trainers around him, and it's basically how do we construct a game plan for him that can hopefully allow him to play for a long time, 15, 20 more years at the top level. The whole risk profile part of it, yeah, I mean, for a guy like that, I guess there's some risk, but he's obviously had a lot of success, so it depends how you define risk too, right?
Yeah.
I think he's just so passionate about the game that for him, there's a little bit of the rolling of the dice of saying, what do I need to do to give myself the best chance to play for 20 years and not be in any pain? And that's the process.
And also compete. Like be, I know he don't want to play just 20 years, just like not winning.
Right. But I think if you were to create a hierarchy, you put at the top of it not being in pain.
Longevity.
Yeah, because it's like a guy of that talent and that work ethic, he's going to figure it out. I mean, he may not, but like most likely he's going to figure it out, right? He's going to figure it out if you give him time.
Yeah.
And he's proving that. So, so this is where sometimes if you're short-sighted and you put the outcome at the top without like sort of the style points of how you do it.
Yeah.
That can be sometimes a little penny wise, pound foolish and short-sighted.
Yeah. How did you get on Golf Channel?
That was just a function of the guys I had coached and some of the research I had done, and I had a relationship with a lot of the people who were involved with the Golf Channel, and it just was one of those relationships that evolved kind of naturally.
And then now are you still doing segments on there and stuff?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, on Golf Pass.
Golf Pass.
Yeah, it's their streaming service that's on Peacock, and then
yeah. So what would you say for anyone listening to this is like I guess like if it just, I know it's hard because everyone needs individual advice, but like what's your generic advice to these business guys trying to golf? Maybe they're 15 handicaps, 10 handicaps.
Yeah, I mean, especially with golf, and this is one of those things where I'm trying to figure out what are some things that can be offered that can help sort of expedite the process of getting whatever level of the game. But you
I always tell them get a coach. I'm just like, dude,
exactly
you suck. Get a coach.
It's exactly
like don't go to the range and just practice the wrong moves over and over again.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, I think you got to get a coach. There's so many good coaches. There's platforms that offer remote coaching. There's a company that I partner with called Golf Live that does a lot of remote. They have a team of remote coaches. I think golf's weird, man. It's a game that's, again, it's like quite a mystery to people. If you can have a person to partner with to kind of go on this journey to sort of figure it out and get better at the game, I think that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. What you said you're partnering on remote coaching and stuff too, which is interesting, right? Because traditionally, I mean, I've never been coached remotely when I was an athlete. Now in business, all day, like most coaching is remote because it's just, talking and information, and I don't need to watch you make an offer to somebody. I could, but for the most part, I'm like teaching you. So, like a guy like Jason, you're training this guy, but you're not living with him every day, going to the range with him every day. Like, how do you remote coach a guy like Jason Day?
Okay, well, a guy like say Jason or Siwoo, like guys at the top level, like there's definitely this rhythm and flow throughout the year of seeing them in person away from a tournament, seeing them in person at a tournament, and then following up over time just to make sure things are like on the right sort of course, the right direction, remotely. So it's not solely remotely. I have coached people on the other side of the world essentially, which has been primarily remotely, and you do it. I mean, it works, right? Like you there is obviously some upside to being like in front of a person, but that's not always like the only option you have, the option you have, right? So I do think it can be done, and we're getting better at it. Like there's, again, this app's really great because it's essentially like a FaceTime, and you can draw lines on it.
Yeah.
And you can have all the tools that you would oftentimes have like in a live lesson. So things like that. The technology is coming about to where it makes remote coaching a lot more similar to in-person coaching.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, dude. I'm excited. I'm excited to see kind of like how you evolve with getting your own remote coaching going, and and all these things. you know, who knows? Maybe we're gonna create Wealthy Golf together and just freaking blow up the golf industry with all these business guys and make these scrubs at least playable.
Yeah.
That's the goal. To me, that's the goal in business. Like, just become a bogey golfer.
Yeah.
Like, if you can
How big is that, right? Where you feel like you can go play in a, whatever it is, a scramble and just not be like, just feel comfortable.
Yeah. Like, if you get to bogey, you're, in my opinion, good. Like, you're
you're
not holding anyone back.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. I don't even say that. I mean, like if you're breaking, you know, like 100 or 90, like, I mean, you feel good on the course.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
you'll have hit some good shots. Like, you'll come back.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, bro, it's been a lot of fun chatting with you. I'm excited for my lesson that we're about to have. So guys, we're going to film this lesson. So if you want to see like I've been talking crap about swings. So we're going to see if my swing's actually as good as I might think it is. I don't know. We're going to see. It's definitely not consistent. That much I know. Something's happening in that impact zone that's making it inconsistent. But we'll link to that video, or if you're watching this on YouTube, it'll be the next video. But Chris, I appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, guys, make sure you watch the next one and subscribe, and we'll see you later. Peace.